What is the end goal of the European Union? And where is my voice in Brussels?
I can answer it very clearly. The European Union is just, or it is, a cooperation of 28 sovereign states.
Sovereign states?
Yes.
A sovereign country is boss over its own money and laws. Our parliament used to decide how our money was spent, but now the national budget is under control of the European Commission. They take care of our wallets and the wallets of the other 28 EU countries. How well is all this money spent? Europe is in crisis, but the European Union thinks it needs a new building. Poland built 121 kilometers of sound wall in a remote area with no people. The only ones to have their ears protected were cows. The last 5 years, the European Union transferred 800 million euros directly to the government of Egypt. Reports now show that most of the money cannot be traced, and the promised better democracy and human rights are not established. Despite this, the EU neighborhood policy now promised an extra 5 billion euros for Egypt. I understand that some projects go wrong. That can happen. The Da Vinci project, part of the education program Lifelong Learning. What happened? Orders were illegally given to certain companies. Luckily, EU accountants are trying to find out about this corruption, and Brussels is very happy with these loyal detectives, right? This is Paul van Buitenen, a happy working accountant for the European Commission. Until he started to see something wrong in the Da Vinci project.
You have official selection procedures, but you can also have secret agreements where you agree with among your people that certain candidates should get the money, and then you also agree how you have to dress that up so that it will match the selection criteria, so that on the face of it nothing is wrong and the selection process is going according to the rules. They said, oh, but this is nothing serious, or it's practice, or it's not, you do not see it the right way, or you are a bit too narrow-minded.
Yeah.
You must be more flexible because otherwise you cannot spend the money.
So you decided to leave it at that and do no more investigation?
I continued gathering material, but I didn't go to my hierarchy anymore.
No.
And when I had enough material, I went to the anti-fraud unit in the European Commission, which is another unit not in the organization where I worked. And they didn't pick it up either.
So loyal EU accountant van Buitenen saw no other option than to go to the press. A huge scandal broke out and the entire EU Commission had to resign. The first and only time in history. He had to defend himself against EU law department's attacks for years. And while his fraud-committing EU colleagues continued enjoying their lives and European pensions, Van Buitenen didn't. Prosecuting whistleblowers. Operating in secrecy. Keeping documents away from us. The untransparency and secrecy of the European Union amazed me. Why does a great peace project need this? So I went on a search and found quite interesting things. Laws are made by the European Commission. These are 50,000 civil servants who are appointed and not elected.
So we have a situation where the Parliament is given legislation and works out how it might be enacted, rather than normally a Parliament passes law and a civil service works out how it's enacted.
Right.
So the real power to make law and to build a body of law rests with people that we can't vote for and we can't remove.
But these unappointed people need good ideas to come up with laws. Where do they get these ideas from? Lobbyists.
How much easier is it to spend your money on one capital city than 27 across all 27 member states? So it makes far more sense. So this has become a big hub. I mean, in terms of the figures, which is quite important, there's between 15 and 30,000 lobbyists here in Brussels. The figures are very unsure, partly because there's no transparency, very little transparency at least. There's a register for lobbyists, but unfortunately, unlike the US, it's voluntary, which means if you don't want to, you don't have to.
Brussels is Mecca for lobbyists, and the consequences arrive to the most intimate parts of our lives. Meat TC1507, a genetically modified supercorn that keeps bugs away. But it's also dangerous for humans and animals. Research shows that genetic modification increases the risk of cancer and causes birth defects. That's why it's banned. Until now, the European Commission declares it safe for consumption. Despite 19 EU countries not wanting the corn, massive online protests from people, and scientists saying it's not safe to take it, the European Commission thinks you should eat it. I wondered why the Commission allowed it, until I found out that 60% of the experts of the food group from the European Commission has direct business ties to the food industry. Enjoy your meal.
People have begun to question, why are we making decisions in favour of big business?
Yeah.
Why are we, giving tax breaks when actually people like me and you are suffering at home, are losing job, can't find housing? There's a complete mismatch between the interests of big business and the interests of normal people.
I found it kind of ironic. Under the smoke of the European Union buildings lies one of the poorest neighborhoods in Europe. One of the densest populated areas, with almost 30% unemployment and mass illiteracy. For these people the dream feels far away. In Belgium, the deepest divided country of the European continent, that spent a record 541 days without government. Here lies the headquarters of the unification dream. A dream with at its core the original idea to favor big corporations. The European Parliament does have a good idea. It cannot make laws, it cannot appoint or elect the European Commission, it cannot inquire the European Commission, and many times it doesn't have access to secret documents. The Parliament is my place in Europe, but as we see, it doesn't always listen. It's kind of ironic, because we're the ones paying their salary. And not a bad one, I might add. I found a member of Parliament who agreed to be transparent about his salary.
That's my paycheck. Let's see. Well, you can. This is basically what we get. That's, well, let's say 8,000.
Like your salary, yeah.
Yeah, that's the base salary. And we get our daily allowance. That's 300 euros.
There was also like an extra of like 4,000 per month on expenses or something? Or is that...
Yeah, and it's meant basically for not having an office. You can use it, and you never have to explain where you spend it on.
766 members of Parliament get more than 3 million euros per month for office expenses. But there's more. Traveling is also paid.
You get paid for the for how long you travel and for basically the distance between the two.
Right.
But if you go by car, then you're hitting the jackpot.
Working for the European Parliament gets you a monthly salary of 18,600 euros. Not a bad income, especially if you take into account that most of them hardly pay income tax, because they live in Brussels. Next to getting a royal salary, they receive money for a secretary, 21,000 euros per month. The European Parliament is on constant travel between Belgium and France. All Parliament members and 47 trucks of files travel more than 400 kilometers. Parliament members receive another 650 euros in cash. But of course, in the back of a limo you need to look good. So in the end of the month, a free EU haircut awaits them.
We have an enormous car park.
And they are free to use.
They're free to use, yes,
Right.
for us as members of Parliament. There are drivers available.
I decided to try it for myself. See if the drivers do drive you around. But the driver doesn't want to take me. I have to go for the common people's option. It was time for a European constitution. And this time, we had a say. In a binding referendum about transferring more powers to Europe, the unthinkable happened. The constitution was denied in Holland, but also in Ireland, Denmark and France. We people won. Or did we?
Things looked very grim. The outlook was very grim. And then the Commission said, let's stop the process. We need to come up with something different.
And yes, they came up with something completely different. The Lisbon Treaty. But how different was this Lisbon Treaty?
It is the constitutional treaty in a different wrapping.
You and me didn't want more Europe, and we denied the constitution. So this time, we were not asked about our opinion.
Was that fair to the people that said no?
No.
It wasn't.
No.
No?
No. It's a scam.
Yeah?
Yes.
I was curious about a new opinion. How do people outside the EU see these developments? I decided to go on a trip. Switzerland. Not part of the EU. But why didn't they join us? I hope to get a better understanding of our own situation through the eyes of the Swiss people. Why are the Swiss not part of the EU?
Sie wären froh, wenn wir zu ihnen kämen, zur
Ja?
EU, oder?
Ja,
Aber wir möchten nicht.
wieso nicht?
Wir haben das Gefühl, dass wir da nicht mehr machen können, was wir wollen.
Okay.
Wir können jetzt selber abstimmen. Wir gehen am Sonntag abstimmen, dann sagen wir, das wollen wir und das wollen wir nicht.
Ja.
Und die Mehrheit entscheidet. Oder?
The Swiss have a direct democracy, meaning they can vote all the time on many issues. To learn more about this, I set up a meeting with the chief editor of a large newspaper.
Direct democracy means that really the citizens are the chiefs. You know, they actually are in charge here. They're responsible. They have the highest power in their hands.
Do you think as a Swiss citizen you have more power than I do as a member of European Union?
Definitely, absolutely, definitely,
Yeah?
absolutely. For example, we vote on even 0.1% of the VAT tax, for example, whereas in Germany they could change the tax when I lived there from, you know, they could raise it from 3% without any kind of plebiscite or vote on the votation. So that's I would say that's a very specific result of direct democracy, and more control of the budget, of what politicians do with the tax money.
The people here have an absolute veto on every law. Take, for example, ESM, European Stability Mechanism.
Das Grundkapital beträgt 700 Milliarden Euro.
Der ESM kann also beliebig nachfordern. Unbegrenzt. Und wir sind dann, siehe Artikel 9, bedingungslos und unwiderruflich verpflichtet zu zahlen?
Der ESM verfügt über volle Rechts- und Geschäftsfähigkeit für das Anstrengen von Gerichtsverfahren. Der ESM, sein Eigentum, seine Finanzmittel und Vermögenswerte genießen umfassende gerichtliche Immunität.
Wenn der ESM ruft, dann muss es schnell gehen. Immerhin 7 Tage. Bei den normalen Bankenlaufzeiten müssten wir also innerhalb von 4 Tagen den Überweisungsträger ausfüllen.
At the introduction of the euro, bailouts were strictly forbidden. Now, we have to come up with billions of euros in 4 days. No questions asked, no right to refuse.
The crown on this particular corporate interest project, as it has become, was the introduction of the Eurozone. The euro as a monetary instrument which allowed corporate interests by means of state actors to capture national political agendas and transform national political economies into basically neo-conservative or neoliberal kind of entities.
You say the euro is a business coin.
Absolutely. If you accept that and you take that as a lens, glasses, and you start looking at what is currently going on in the euro crisis, the way in which the euro crisis is being managed, the kind of institutional remaking that is being enacted in Ireland, in Portugal, in Spain, in Italy, and in Greece in particular. It is an erosion of social rights. Boundaries are being redrawn in order to serve again the interests of large corporations which want only one thing, and it is flexible labour markets, no taxation, and integrated markets. And that's basically what is currently being constructed on the back of the euro crisis.
Het idee dat je het niet meer in eigen hand hebt, dat je daarvan afhankelijk bent en dat je daar...
Her prestige project is a public prosecution office. This will of course serve above the national ones. It will be able to give direct orders to countries on which person to prosecute and how. Also, the talks of a European army are getting more intense. A European public prosecution service and a European army. Should we want this? And aren't these normally parts of a sovereign country?
We should never end up in a situation where the EU is eating up the member states.
Are they eating up the member states right now?
The way the current discussions about the future of the EU is developing, yes.
The European Union institutionally at the moment is, in my eyes, the opposite of a democracy. It's a democracy without people.
So if you don't live in a democracy anymore, what do we live in?
A technocracy. It's a technocracy.
What is a technocracy?
A technocracy is a political entity in which collective decision making is no longer subject to democratic accountability.
As good citizens, we vote. But why actually? If the people we choose are not the ones in power. And the ones in power don't need my voice or yours.